Recently recognized by Golf Digest as one of the sport's great masterminds, Dr. Gregg Steinberg has consulted with some of the greatest athletes from both the PGA and LPGA. His expertise has also been sought by NBA stars as well as NFL stars. Dr. Steinberg is an expert in achieving peak performance and a world-renowned sports psychologist, speaker, author, and TV personality. Please welcome Dr. Gregg Steinberg.
Thank you. How can Michael Jordan teach us about communication? How can the great sprinter Michael Johnson teach us how to turn pressure into pleasure? How can the Chinese tennis player Jing Zhang teach us the power of pride? That's what we are going to discover today. But first, I want to thank Arunas and Eric for inviting me to come to Hughes today to do what I love to do, which is help people become more successful and happier in their lives. And as a sports psychologist, I always get the question, is performance 100% mental? Is it 80% mental? Is it 70% mental? Well, I like to refer to what Yogi Berra has said. Next slide, please. Well, Yogi Berra, if you're not familiar with Yogi Berra, he's this famous Yankee catcher, Yankee manager, and he has these famous yogiisms. You probably heard some of them. One of them is, when you come to a fork in the road, take it, thank you. He also said, you have to go to all your friends' funerals so they'll come to yours. Now, I'm not sure how that works, but think about it. He said that. He also said baseball was 90% mental and the other 50% was hitting. Now, I'm not sure how that works, but he said it. But Yogi was dead wrong. Yogi was dead wrong because what I've discovered in all my work with working with professional athletes, my research, my writings, is that the most successful people, whether it's sport or business or music or art, sure, it's about mental toughness, but ultimately the most successful people have mastered their emotions. It's about emotional toughness. And they stay calm under pressure, they can be totally emotionally engaged, and they can get pumped up in a moment's notice. And my favorite story to illustrate this is about Muhammad Ali. Long before he was boxing champion of the world, long before he strode up those stairs shaking from Parkinson's to light the Olympic flame in Atlanta, he grew up very poor in Louisville. His mother could barely afford enough food, let alone toys, but the young Muhammad Ali saw this blue bike. It was a Schwinn, had a great leather seat and a handlebar, and he loved this bike. So all summer long, he boxed groceries at the local grocery store, excuse the pun, finally had enough money for this bike, handed the shopkeeper the money, rode all over Louisville the next day, showing off to his friends and his family this blue bike, parked his bike in front of the grocery store the next day, made sure the lock was nice and tight, came back out from work, someone had clipped his lock and stolen his bike. And Muhammad Ali looked all summer for his bike, never found his bike, and never found out who stole his bike. But we all know Muhammad Ali is a true champion, and he harnessed that negative energy into a positive. So every time he'd step in the ring, he'd point at his opponent and say, "You're the guy who stole my blue bike." And that's a true story. But emotional toughness is not just about individual performance. It's also about team performance. And we have to have emotionally tough teams. And Mike Cook gave me a great example when I visited Hughes a couple weeks ago. And he said, Hughes is like a winning race car team. Now, on a winning race car team, we have the driver, we have the leader who talks to the driver, we have the pit crew, we have the engineers. And they all have to work together, they all have to know each other's responsibilities, they all have to communicate, and they all have to be emotionally tough under pressure. And Hughes is like that. There's many departments, many divisions, international divisions, and we all have to know our role, our responsibility, and communicate. And to do that, you will have a winning team. But also, you have to be emotionally tough. And so it's my goal today to not only show you individual emotional toughness, but what it takes to have team emotional toughness. And to do that, to develop emotional toughness, I like to explain it like a journey to the top of a mountain. And we're all on this journey, whether it's business, or whether it's life, or whether it's family. And it takes what I believe 5 emotional strengths to make this journey. And the first one is emotional awareness. We have to know the path, and we have to know what path to take and what path to avoid. It's going to take a lot of energy to make this trip. Emotional bravado relates to our fears. On this path, we're going to see crevices, and if we jump over those crevices, if we face our fears, we realize our fears weren't so great. Emotional preparedness relates to being prepared for these obstacles and boulders along the way, and if we're prepared, we're emotionally tough. And the last one relates to emotional balance. This journey takes a long time, and we have to be committed to this journey, and commitment comes from our purpose, having meaning, and having pride. And today's talk, even though I'm a sports psychologist, is not about sport. It's about life. It's about performance. And I don't even see myself as a sports psychologist. I see myself as a performance psychologist. But the principles of sport, there's a lot of pressure. You feel a lot of pressure. There's a lot of outcome in sport. You have outcomes that you have to attain. There's time constraints in sport. You have time constraints. The situations are the same. So ultimately, you're really a corporate athlete. So why not look at what the great athletes do, their strategies, what makes them great, and apply that to your world? So ultimately, it's my goal to show you how to move from a corporate athlete to become a corporate champion. And in this venue, it's hard for me to answer questions. I love questions, and I would love to answer your questions. We're actually going to do a book signing. Everyone got my book, and we're going to do a book signing during a break, and then also later on, at lunch, and then later on this evening. So I would love to hear your comments, and I'm going to personally sign everyone's book if you'd like me to do that. And I love your questions. I was talking to, I just don't talk to businesses, I talk to young athletes, and I was talking to 8-year-old golfers last summer in Nashville, where I live, and I was talking for 20 minutes about confidence and composure and dealing with the pressure, and they're standing there for 20 minutes just going. And I said, is there any questions? Do you have any questions? And this one 8-year-old in the back room raised his hand, and he goes, and I go, what is it? He goes, do you know you look just like Will Ferrell? So it must be the hair, I don't know. I was hoping for George Clooney. But let's start with the first emotional strength, which relates to emotional awareness. And I want to talk about avoid the Michael Jordan effect. Now, we all know Michael Jordan. Most of us know Michael Jordan is considered one of the greatest basketball players of all time. It was like he could float in midair. It was like he had wings. He was magic. And the players on the Bulls team would watch him and watch his magic and actually sit around and watch Michael do his thing. That was the Michael Jordan effect. Because Michael could win games, but he couldn't win championships without the support of his team. And that's what we call in sports psychology social loafing. Social loafing is when you're on a team and you believe other people will provide the effort, you try less hard, you slack. And one of my favorite studies in regards to social loafing is with the rope pull. These are famous studies. Pretend I'm pulling on a rope, there's mud, and I'm pulling against someone else. You would give, if you're on this rope, you'd give 100% effort because you don't want to go in that mud, right? Well, what we discovered is if we put another person on that rope and you're pulling against 2 people, now everybody, instead of giving 100%, they give 95%. And then if you had a third person, they give 90%. If you had a fourth person, they give 85%. That is social loafing. Well, how do we get rid of social loafing? The way we've discovered it is if you know your roles, if you believe your role is unique, and if you believe your role is meaningful, you reduce social loafing. So let's say, going back to this analogy of the rope pull, I believe I'm the anchor. and I'm on a team with 3 other people, and we're competing against 4 other people, and there's mud in the middle. I'm the anchor, and I'm the only anchor, and my anchor role is essential, and my team believes it's essential. I'm going to give 100%. Well, going back to Michael Jordan, when Michael Jordan realized his role was not to be a superstar, but his role was to inspire his teammates. Instead of bringing an individual consciousness, when he provided and brought to the Chicago Bulls an attitude of a collective consciousness, they went from a winning team to a championship team. So when Michael Jordan inspired Scottie Pippen to be more aggressive to the hoop, when he inspired Horace Grant to get more rebounds, we inspired John Paxson to make more threes, they went from basically just a winning team to a championship team. And when he brought this attitude of a collective consciousness, and he trusted everyone to do their roles, they not only went from a winning team, not only to a championship team, but they became a dynasty. Now that relates directly here at Hughes, because I was fortunate enough to go to the manufacturing plant a couple weeks ago, and I visited there, and what I realized was I know nothing about technology. And I was watching different teams build the same product. So this team was putting on the diodes and the widgets. See, I don't know anything about technology. And this other team was doing quality control, and there was different teams doing basically having different roles for the same product. Now, if everybody on that team, on those separate teams, knew their role was essential and meaningful, then they would be motivated to produce the best product. Now I know all the different departments have different teams or subunits within those departments. And if you believed your role was unique and meaningful, you would be more motivated. So I challenge you this year to become aware of your role, to make sure you believe it's unique and meaningful. And I challenge the leaders in this group to help their staff believe their staff roles are unique and meaningful. And I challenge you here at Hughes to develop an attitude of a collective consciousness. Because I know, and I've heard, and I visited, and I talked to a lot of people, that there's been an attitude of an individual consciousness here, that different departments are separate, almost like stockpiling. There's not enough communication, not enough responsibility taking. Ultimately, if you move to an attitude of a collective consciousness, you will not only move from a winning team, which you already are, to a championship team, which you have been and will become, to a dynasty. Now, who wants to be a dynasty, right? Everybody. Yeah. So let me move on to the next one, which is emotional bravado. Turn pressure into pleasure. I get nervous. You get nervous. Tiger Woods gets nervous, especially now, right? There's a story about Jose Maria Olazabal. He's won 2 Masters. And he said, so he's one of the great all-time greats, he said when he's on the first tee of a major, everything's shaking, except for his golf club, which is back in the bag. So we all get nervous. What great athletes can do is they turn pressure into pleasure. There's an old saying in sports psychology, it's okay to have butterflies, make sure they fly in the right formation. Now, Michael Johnson, the great sprinter, he commanded his butterflies to fly down the track in 1996. I don't know if you remember the gold shoes that he wore. And he won the 200-meter and the 400-meter race. And he said, I thrive on the pressure. Pressure makes me faster. He turned pressure into pleasure. And I was fortunate enough to work with Brandt Snedeker. And Brandt, if you're not familiar with PGA golf, Brandt was Rookie of the Year 2 years ago. He almost won the Masters, which is a major, a couple years ago. So he's the real deal. And Brandt would tell me, and I learned a lot from working with professional athletes, and Brandt would tell me when he missed the green, he looked forward to getting up and down. And the vernacular of golf is when you miss the green, if you chip up and make the putt, that's called getting up and down. So he told me he looks forward to getting up and down. That's why he has positive emotions when he misses the green, and that's what leads to his greatness. Unfortunately, what I've discovered is many amateurs do the opposite. They turn pleasure into pressure. When they miss a green, they say, oh, what are my friends are going to think, and how's my handicap going to, this is going to ruin my handicap, and I'm not going to get up and down, and they get all tight, and then they try to hit the shot, and it goes over the green, and they make a double bogey, and it hurts their round, and they turn what should be a pleasurable day into a pressure-packed situation. And great athletes know this, and that is the labels we give a situation changes our emotions to be positive or changes our emotions to be negative. And we could be happy, we could be glad, we could be sad. And let me give you a really good example. I know many of you have young children in here. Think about this. You're driving to the store with your young son or daughter, and your young son slams the door on your finger when you're getting out on accident. How are you going to feel? You're going to do one of these, ah! You're going to feel a lot of pain and a little anger. Think about the same situation. Your son slams the door on your finger on purpose. Now what are you going to feel? Lots of anger, and a little pain. Well, how we see a situation directly changes our reality. And that reminds me of the story about the little girl driving with her mother. And the little girl says, Mommy, where are all the jerks and losers today? And the mother says, they only come out when your dad's driving. It's a true story. Well, how this relates to you is this. At Hughes, Hughes has gone through a lot of change. You've gone from making boxes, hardware, to service and solution, and you're continuing to do that, continuing to move in a service and solution direction. And in your field of technology, change is a constant, and change is a moving target. Change is difficult. Change gets us out of our comfort zone. Change makes us make mistakes, which we don't like. Change is produces uncertainty, which we don't like. But all great athletes embrace change. There's a saying about change. If you don't embrace change, you become extinct. And athletes do not want to become extinct. And one person that I want to share with you, Magic Johnson, who embraced change, he played for Michigan State, one of the great college players. He came to the Lakers. He saw that he could not be as aggressive as he wanted to. He wasn't making as many points as he wanted to. He saw one of his teammates, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, had this hook shot. So he said, I got to change my game. I have to develop a hook shot. That's what he did, and he's an all-time legend. Another one who embraced change, I don't know if anybody in here is a Bobby Bowden fan, just retired. Yeah. Well, I went to Florida State for my master's, so I'm a big Bobby Bowden fan. Well, in the early 80s, Bobby was a really good coach, but he wasn't a winning national championship coach. He saw the game was moving, the college game, moving from a running game to a run and shoot, a long time passing game. So he went to the San Francisco 49ers during one summer to their training camp, watched what Bill Walsh and Joe Montana did, took that attitude back to Florida State, brought in a run and shoot type of style, and he has since been one of the winningest coaches of all time in college history and has won 2 national championships in 1999 and 1993. And change is essential for our performance, but also we need change as human beings. It's essential for growth as human beings. And the governor, a couple weeks ago, was interviewed by a reporter, and the reporter asked the governor, there's a water quagmire here in California. There's always been a water quagmire because California is a desert. Why don't you leave that quagmire for your successor? And Arnold said to the reporter, you know, I come from a sport background. I embrace change. I need change. Change helps me grow as a governor. governor. And that's true, because long before Arnold was a governor, long before he was the Terminator, Arnold won 7 Mr. Olympias. And I know you're thinking steroids here, but he built his muscle through what we call the overload principle. The overload principle is this: when you shock, when you overload the muscle, when you add change like more reps, more weights, your muscles adapt and they bring in more fluid and more protein. That's how we build muscle. That's how Arnold built muscle. That's our bodies need. Our bodies need change to build. Also, our minds need change. We have discovered that our minds grow long after 18. We used to believe our minds stopped growing after 18, but now it's a continual growth. And if we add change to our minds, like harder Sudokus, harder crossword puzzles, whatever it is, we've discovered that we can prevent Alzheimer's and dementia. So our bodies need change. So I challenge you this year and the forthcoming years to not only embrace change, but to see change as an essential for you as for growth as a human being. And the third emotional strength I want to talk about is emotional preparedness. And I call this train your inner caddy, which I'm going to explain in a minute. But let me talk about being prepared. And being prepared comes from going back to the basics of the basics. Now, John Wooden would teach the basics of the basics at the start of the first day of every season. And you're probably thinking, what would he teach? What's the basics of the basics? Dribbling, free throw shooting? No, it was putting on your socks. John Wooden, the famous UCLA coach, would tell every player how to put on their socks correctly, because if you didn't put on your socks correctly, you would get blisters, and if you got blisters, you couldn't practice, and then you might miss games. That's the basics of the basics. Well, in terms of emotional toughness, not only for individuals or for teams, it's what we say to ourselves. And to illustrate this point, I want to talk about caddies or caddying. And a caddy, carries your clubs, gives you yardage, but a good caddy can do much more than that. A good caddy can help you remain calm under pressure, keep your confidence, bring a lighthearted situation, basically the perspective of a lighthearted situation. But think about this. What if you hit a bad shot and your caddy said to you, "You stink, you're the worst, you might as well go home." And you hit another bad shot and your caddy says, "Oh, this is the worst day, let's just go home." You'd fire that caddy in a heartbeat, right? Or on the other side of the coin, you had a caddy, when you hit a bad shot, your caddy tapped you on the shoulder and said, "Don't worry about it, we're having a good day." You hit another bad shot and your caddy said, "You're having a great score, hang in there." You probably would have a really good day. Well, that same principle relates to our life, except that we have an inner caddy. And our inner caddy can be kind and nurturing and good. And our inner caddy can be negative and destructive. Now, we have inner caddies for golf. This is my inner caddy. When my good inner caddy comes out and says, "Smooth and easy, champ," I hit it down the middle. And when my bad inner caddy comes out and says, "You idiot, don't hit in the water," I hit in the water. But we also have inner caddies for business. And in these tough economic times, many of our inner caddies have turned to the dark side. And now we tell ourselves, we're not going to make those quotas. This is unfair. I hate change. I don't like my boss. I don't like those clients. Those clients don't like me. Why don't we fire that bad inner caddy in a heartbeat? Well, in a lot of cases, that has become a habit. But what I've learned in my 20 years working with professional athletes, consulting business executives, is that all these successful people fire their bad inner caddy in a heartbeat, and they train and retrain and retrain and retrain their good inner caddy. And to illustrate my point, I'm going to show you a quick video in 1 second about Billy Mills. But let me tell you about Billy Mills. He won the 10,000 meter Olympics. He won the Olympic gold in the 10,000 meters in the 1960 Olympics. And this video is for 4 years. It shows how he trained and he retrained and he retrained his good inner caddy. So let's show this video and then we'll talk about that.
We come down to September 5th, 6 weeks before the games. And once again, I put down, I'm in great shape, starting to have a strong finish, take some easy strides from here on out. I'm ready for a 28-25 10,000 meter run in Tokyo. The subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between reality or imagination.
Billy Mills created the greatest upset in Olympic history when he won the 10,000 meter event. And yet, he had planned how to win this race with clockwork precision for 4 years.
For me, it was a form of self-hypnosis, and I visualized dozens of times a day. Then I started with my workout book. So in this particular notebook, as I got closer to the games, this was the summer of 1964, I believe in August, I put down, I'm in great shape, must believe I can run with the best in the world now, and I can beat them at Tokyo.
The problem he faced was how to improve his best time by almost 2 minutes.
Now, how do you improve almost 2 minutes? It's just too phenomenal to think in terms of 2 minutes or a minute and 50 seconds. So I just went to the simplest form of something I thought I could believe. Once around the track, 25 laps, I felt I just have to put forth that much more effort, a lap, and that's 25 seconds. To improve 50 seconds, each lap I'd have to stay on top of the intensity of my pace and that's 50 seconds. 2 laps to go. I'm on Ron Clark's shoulder, and Ron looked back. My thoughts were, my God, he's worried. If I could just stay with him, I have a chance. I have a chance. We go into the last lap. I'd gone boxed in, perfectly boxed in. He nudged me a little. I nudged him back, and he gently put his hand under my elbow and just pushed me out. I thought I was going to fall. I went out, stumbled. I closed back on his shoulder. Gamudi from Tunisia broke between us. At that point, I was going to accept 3rd place. Coming off the final curve, I could not hear any noise at all. I could hear the throbbing of my heart. I could hear the heartbeat pounding. I could feel a tingling sensation creeping down my forearm, my vision coming and going, but my thoughts changing from one more try to I can win, I can win, I can win. I could see the tape stretched across the finish line. 30 yards to go, my thoughts became over and over again, I won, I won, I won, but I'm still in 3rd place.
Look at Mills! Look at Mills! Coming on! Mills is coming on! Oh, it might be Bill Mills! What a tremendous surprise here! Bill Mills of the United States wins the 10,000 meters! Bill Mills of the United States, a tremendous upset!
You focus for 4 years, dozens of times a day, visualizing, really reliving the moment the way you want it to be. And then you win. That one fleeting moment, you know you're the very best in the world.
I love that guy. I've seen that 100 times. It still brings a smile on my face, and I saw that it brought a smile on your face. It's amazing. If you look at the video, he's coming around the last lap, Billy Mills, and he says, third's okay, third's okay. That's his bad inner caddy. And then all of a sudden he says, no, I can win, I can win. That's his good inner caddy that he trained for 4 years come out. And he had one of the greatest kicks of Olympic history. And Ron Clark that day was supposed to win. He was the hands-on favorite. Billy Mills was a nobody. But Billy Mills won because he had that secret weapon. He trained and retrained and retrained his good inner caddy. And I show, there's a lot you can get from this video. I show this video a lot, and I was showing it to the women's Vanderbilt lacrosse team a couple years ago. And I said to the ladies, I said, what did you get from this video? And one of the ladies raised her hand. She said, wow, Billy Mills was a hottie when he was younger. So we get a lot from the video, but I think we can get a lot from this video at Hughes. The first is what Prodman said earlier today about service, customer service. And I want to relate to communication. I've done this and I've spoken throughout the country about the inner caddy, and a lot of times I get this comment. I've had a leader come up to me and say, I just had a staff member say to me, I've had a bad inner caddy for 6 months, and he would have never have said that before. It's because when we talk about inner caddies, it's like once removed, and it's a great way to communicate. So if you want to communicate with your clients or your colleagues or leaders communicating with their staff, if you say something like you're being defensive or you're being non-communicative or you're being fearful, whatever it is, and you talk about your inner caddy doing that, they're more likely to be responsive to that. If you say it directly about them, they're going to be defensive and put up that wall. So the inner caddy is a great way to communicate your needs, and it's a great way to connect better with your customers. Another issue relates to you developing your good inner caddy. And I recommend this to everybody, whether it's a business executive or whether it's a top-notch athlete, is to develop their own inner caddy book. And just like Billy Mills, every day you write down one positive self-statement, like I'm going to feel great today, I'm going to have great energy, I'm going to connect with my clients, I'm going to speak well, whatever it is. The proof is in the pudding. It worked for Billy Mills. It was his secret weapon. That's the reason why he won the gold medal, and it's going to work for you. And I also get, how do you fire your bad inner caddy? Now, who out there has a bad inner caddy? Okay, yeah, okay. If you didn't raise your hand, you're probably in denial, right? Well, I call it the rubber band technique. You put a rubber band around your wrist, and every time you have a negative thought, a self-defeating thought, you snap it. Just hard enough, not to feel too much pain, but just hard enough to associate that pain with that negative thought. And I was working with a fellow on the PGA Tour, and his bad inner caddy always came out when there was water on the hole. He always saw his ball go in the water. So we were playing this hole together a few years ago, and there was water left and water right, and he had his rubber band on, and I said, oh, this is going to be trouble. And he got behind his ball, and he went, snap, 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 snap. And I said, just hit it. Well, he hit it in the water. But that was the bad news. But the good news is he says it really worked, and he's diminished his bad inner caddy. So getting back to the basics, it's essential for you, and I challenged you here today to get back to the basics, to make sure your inner caddy is a good inner caddy, and you train and retrain and continue to retrain that good inner caddy. And for the rest of the day, I'm going to help talk about that. I'm going to talk about collective consciousness as we go through the day. And at the very end of the day, I'm going to talk about the power of pride. So we're going to move on for the next person to come up, and I'll see you probably in a few hours. Thank you very much.